You are Locked On Chargers Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Los Angeles on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome to the Locked On Chargers Postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. This one is done, has been done for a little while. Looked good in the beginning, did not end up that way. I am Pete Fox, covering sports in LA dating back to 2007. He is Kenyon Barner. 3 Super Bowl rings, 9 years in the league, and we're going to get into this one. We're going to talk about the first half for the Chargers. We're going to talk about how big the loss of J.K. Dobbins was, and then we'll talk about the Chargers defense and their inability to stop the run. Tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, Kenyon, I was feeling good in the first half, especially after the first quarter. The first drive was spectacular, but then in the fourth quarter, Johnston dropped that ball, and I was like, that was at the 10-minute mark, and I said, this game's over.
Yeah, there's a saying, it's not about how you start, it's how you finish. And we just did not finish well. As you mentioned, Derrick Henry kind of had his way with us today.
It felt to me like the Chargers were served a big portion of big boy football, turkey pot pie full of big boy football. And I think for them, I think that it was an eye-opening experience for them. Look, they were hanging in there and playing some good football, but the Derrick Henry running the ball was just too much for them. He was just, it's not surprising. I said in the beginning, starting before this game, my review of this game was, what do the Chargers need to do to win? They got to stop the run. That's the biggest thing for them. And they weren't able to do that. And, again, as a guy who pays attention to the Titans, I look at Derrick Henry and I say, why did you get rid of him? Why did you get rid of this guy?
Yeah.
He is the best, if not one of the best running back in the league. Obviously, we saw Saquon rack up 255 yesterday on that very same field. So definitely playing well as far as the ground conditions for the running backs, with 140 today for Derrick Henry. But yeah, there was a couple of times where I know we've joked about this, making business decisions thing before. Where I saw some guys that were about half as big as Derrick Henry, like Tarheeb Still, hanging on him, doing everything
they could. Fight.
I was like, hey man, dude, like, good for you. Like, I know you're a rookie and you probably won't do that next year, but like today he was out there giving it his all, and I respect that and I appreciated that. But yeah, in the end, Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 140 yards, and 3 fourth down conversions. 2 of them, Derrick Henry busting off big yards, and those 3 fourth down conversions turned into 14 points. So that was also a huge deciding factor in this game.
That's where the game was lost for me, in my opinion. Anytime, not only you get a stop on third down and you're expecting a punt, but then they come back on fourth down and do it 3 times and convert. And like you said, 14 points, that's the difference in a game. You have to be able to get off the field. We weren't able to get off the field. And then with Derrick Henry as well, there were so many times where there was contact made. We talk about yards after contact. Contact is made, he's somewhat stopped, but he's falling forward 2 and 3 more yards, and that eventually adds up. You know what I'm saying? Those that small yardage gain adds up, and that's exactly what this Ravens team did. They kind of ground and pound the Chargers defense, and just kind of had their way in that run game. And it's hard to stop Derrick Henry, as it has been for the past couple of years, and we see that still that rings true today.
I looked at the losses because I was surprised that the Ravens have lost 4 games. I'm like, who the Ravens lose to? Cleveland? Like, what?
Yeah.
The Vegas Raiders? How? They lost to Kansas City in a 7-point game, and they lost to Pittsburgh without scoring a touchdown. So that's even surprising.
Yeah.
How do you? I know Pittsburgh's defense is good, and that makes sense to me. So 2 legitimate losses and 2 excuse, because I look at this Ravens team, what I saw today, and I go, they could win a Super Bowl. I mean, they've got everything. They got a good defense. They got Derrick Henry. They got Zay Flowers. They got Mark Andrews. Both of those guys played big roles in today's win for them. And of course, the most important guy on the field, probably Lamar Jackson. I remember thinking when he was, at Louisville, going into the draft, there were a lot of people that were questioning whether or not, he could play in the NFL. I'm like, what have you seen from him that makes you think this guy cannot play in the NFL? He's got a great arm. He's very mobile, very nimble. I've always enjoyed watching him because he's just so exciting, and he doesn't need to
He's electrifying.
16 of 22 today for 177 yards. On the other side, Herbert had a good game, wasn't great. 21 of 36, 218. It all kind of fell apart, unraveled when J.K. Dobbins left the game with a knee injury.
Yeah, the offense changed. That 1-2 punch with Gus and J.K. all of a sudden wasn't as effective once J.K. went out that game, and it's you really see the difference when he's not there. And that's where the dynamic of this game changed. You weren't able to run the ball as effectively as we were accustomed to, and how well they ran the ball in that first half before he went out. JK was having a day. I was calling this, okay, this is a revenge game for them Baltimore boys, and for him to be able to go out. Yeah, he was having his way. He was having a great day on the ground, and injuries happen, unfortunately, and I hope that he's okay. We've been talking all year on this show about his health and him being able to play. So I'm hoping that he is okay and it's nothing significant.
Well, I mean, you could definitely see that the play action game basically disappeared, and that what's been working for them and what was working early in the game for them tonight, play action. You find Ladd McConkey open. They were also finding Will Dissly, Palmer. It was just an extremely off day for Quentin Johnston. 5 drops.
That's a tough day.
I was like, what is going on there? That is very strange and bizarre. But Ladd McConkey had another good game, 6 catches for 83 yards, and Will Dissly 4 for 47. Both of those guys perfect. Josh Palmer, it wasn't quite so perfect. 3 of 8 for 38 yards. Rager 2 for 20. And Dobbins caught 3 balls for 19 yards. So the play action was a big thing. And I thought I was really encouraged to see that Herbert continued to run the ball a little bit when he got into trouble, but I was encouraged that the line was giving him time and he was just staying in the pocket, stepping up if needed to be, and zipping balls in the first half. I was like, that's what we saw last week in that win against Cincinnati, and it's good to see that it is still there. And then going into the half, 24 seconds on the clock. What an amazing drive that was.
You can't run a better 2-minute drill than that.
Yeah. 8 yards, 11 yards, 17 yards. I mean, I was so encouraged going into the third quarter. And then it got ugly real fast. And again, when Johnston dropped that ball, because I wrote down at the 10-minute mark after the Ravens had that touchdown to Andrews, which was a great catch. Yeah. This is a big drive for them. And it was 3rd and 6. They had a PI, which then was offset by a hold. And which then was
complete bull. That was a awful call. That was a terrible call. That was a terrible call.
I missed that one, but there was a handful. There was a couple of calls that were like the no PI on Palmer. That was a pretty bad call too. You could see that he had his hand around his hip and up under the shoulder pads a little bit. There was definite contact. Whether or not the ball was uncatchable, this was at the 6-minute mark of the 4th. They never brought it up. So if it was uncatchable, shouldn't they have mentioned that? But they didn't.
Definitely should have mentioned it.
Yeah. So
and it wasn't an uncatchable ball. I'll say that much. There and to Palmer, he got to keep running. He shut it down and then tried to go again. You keep running on that, then I believe you get that call. But refs are going to blow calls. They do it every game. They do it all season long. And this game was no different. But going back to the Chargers, that first half, at one point in time, we were talking about the play action. They had, I believe it was 12 passes and 13 run plays. You talk about the balance and the effectiveness of that run game. That's where the success of the play action was. And in that second half, it was just non-existent.
Yeah, they had good coverage. I wrote a note that there was not a lot of options open for Lamar Jackson. He just had like the Chargers were covering, and that's what they've been doing. They've been very, very good at that. So all of that was working. And, I was like, look, I'm not thinking or believing that the Ravens are going to just, play like this for an entire fourth quarter. But if the Chargers can keep playing like this and the Ravens can, turn things around a little bit, we're going to have ourselves a ball game. But the Chargers didn't keep playing like this. And, Tarheeb still trying to tackle Derrick Henry just wasn't enough.
Not a matchup you want. Not a matchup you want. We seen what Derrick Henry did to Josh Norman. So that's not a good matchup for DBs.
Yeah, if Quentin Johnston doesn't drop that ball, he's got room to run, and it's a different ball game. So, and then you could see after that he was thinking about it, and it was stuck in his head, and he was a mess. So we've all been there.
In football, you have that term. You got to have a short-term memory, and it's funny that we bring that up. I was just having a conversation with my friend's flag football team, his little kid's flag football team, and I'm telling them, listen. There's never been a guy who's never dropped the ball. There's been fumbles. There've been missed assignments. There's mistakes that's going to be made. And as a professional, you have to have a short-term memory because that next play is the only play that matters.
Yep. It happens in all sports, professional, amateur, weekend hackers. I think you have to forget about what just happened, especially when it's bad and you got to move on. And, I saw something on Instagram with regard to golf. I was telling you a golf story, which I'll tell you afterwards. But I saw this guy breaking it down about how, weekend golfers are way too hard on themselves as to what they expect as compared to their skill level. So I would assume that kind of mentality transfers over to all sports, especially professionals, expecting to be perfect all the time. And when you're not, letting that hang over your head and not being able to shake it and say, look, got to get back in there, got to make the next play. And that's what makes, that's what sets apart, in my opinion, the good from the great, that ability to just say, you know what, let's move on. Let's not let this bother us. And let's have short-term memory and move on. So after the break, though, I have two things that I want to get into, which are very strange. And hopefully you as a former professional can answer for me because actually one of them I don't think you can answer, but the other one I think you can. It has to do with Wiggins' uniform. I was confused about a couple of things going on there. And I want to talk about Ladd McConkey, both as a player and as a dude. So we'll talk about that after the break. He's Kenyon Barner and Pete Fox. It's the Locked On Chargers postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel. Ravens, their 8th win, handing the Chargers their 4th loss, 30-23, the final. All right, today's episode of the Locked On Chargers postcast is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not, or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Here are just a few of the courses available at Hillsdale College. Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics. I know a lot of people that could use that one. The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of Roman Republic. That's some ancient history right there, which is super interesting. And a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. Go now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost at all, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Tonight's show also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is, of course, America's #1 DFS site, daily fantasy sports, the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 players from 2 teams, and you have a shot to win up to 100 times your money. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Download the app. You get a Thanksgiving free square, another bonus from them. You can download the app. It's prizepicks.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL, prizepicks.com, LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Chargers kind of fall apart in the second half after J.K. Dobbins left the game. They were unable to recover and get back into this one. They scored a late touchdown, which was kind of meaningless, but it did make it a little bit more interesting. Lamar Jackson had a very nice game. The Chargers continue to throw the ball pretty well, hold on to the ball. No turnovers again today for either team, which was nice to see for the Chargers. Unfortunately, they couldn't create any turnovers, which was bad news. They also couldn't stop Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. 4 carries for 55 yards and 1 touchdown, which he busted off a 51-yarder. That was a kind of a backbreaker as well for the Chargers. But here are my 2 questions for you. How old do you think Ladd McConkey really is? He looks like he's about 14.
He looks like a child.
He
really does.
Doesn't play like one, but he sure looks like one. And what is up with Wiggins having 2 mouthpieces dangling from his helmet and not wearing either of them? Can you explain that to me?
It's a fashion statement. It's a fashion statement. That's the only thing I can say because I don't understand it. A mouthpiece is meant to be worn. It's meant to be put in your mouth and to protect your teeth. So I have to say that it must be a fashion statement that got to be a fashion statement. Why? I don't understand it. Would I do it? No, I wouldn't.
It just seems like it's a lot going on there and stuff dangling around. And when you're running, that thing's flapping up in your face.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he played well. It didn't seem to bother him. So I was like,
it got to be a fashion. He's trying to, every player wants to look cool and have their own thing. Yeah. So I'm assuming that might be his thing.
I got to be honest. I don't know the name of any other Baltimore defender. So worked out. I also know the name of Zay Flowers. Boy, that dude is fast. Is he the fastest guy in the league?
No, not close. Not close. And we won't do that.
give Troy and what's his name? Troy and what's his name? Give them credit. They did not say he was the fastest. Joe, he did not say he was the fastest in the league, but he sure looked like he could be up there.
He can run now. Yeah, he can run. He can run, and especially on that catch right before half, he was moving. Yeah. He was moving.
Yeah. What I liked about the offense today, in spite of not really performing in the second half all that much, was I really thought that, and not like it's surprising. It was just nice to see that Justin Herbert is playing with a lot more confidence than we saw probably 3 weeks ago, and that's a lot of that has to do with health, but throwing, tough balls into tight windows and across the field, off balance. He wasn't afraid to do any of that. And that was really nice to see. Even on the touchdown where he ran the first score of the game, he had Ladd McConkey open crossing the field, but it didn't seem like it was open enough. I was like, he's open, like throw it to Ladd, he's right there. And then he tucked it and ran and scored the touchdown anyway. But that to me is the difference between, again, a good quarterback and a great quarterback. He's like, I don't love that look right there. And you could see he was locked on him and he didn't check down at all. He was like, that's my guy. I don't know if I like it. I'm going to run. And I thought that was nice to see, but I thought he played a good game all in all. When your running back goes out and you guys rely on the play action, it's tough. There's not a whole lot they can do. Gus Edwards is a good running back, but he only had 11 yards today. So I don't know that you could put him in that position. And the Ravens
Gus can handle that. Gus can handle that. Gus was the bell cow for a minute out there in Baltimore. So that's not foreign territory to Gus, but you got to get a guy going. You got to call some things that he likes, some things that the old line likes. You really got to get a guy going. And for an injury to take place, mid-game, and him not be able to catch his rhythm, it's hard to get a guy going, but you have to get him going, especially now with JK possibly having an injury that could silence him. Who knows what that injury is, but you got to get Gus going.
Did you feel like that part of the playbook kind of shut down for Greg Roman after J.K. Dobbins went out?
1,000%.
He didn't continue to run the game plan?
Yeah, I think a lot of these coaches, they develop game plans for particular guys, but you have to prepare the guys behind them, because this is the game of football. Injuries happen just like that. Snap of a finger, somebody can be injured. So Greg has to have more trust in his guys. He has to have more trust in Gus and those guys behind him to continue to call the game as you were, because the way you were calling the game is why you were successful in that first half. And it just it looked like in the second half, they just completely lost their identity.
Dicker the kicker, 3 for 3. Dicker the kick, 65 of 66. That's a hell of a streak right there. After the break, we're going to get into a couple of bad plays, which really affected the Chargers by Christian Fulton. He was doing so well until back-to-back plays just didn't go his way, and then he had an opportunity for a PI. For an interception. Yeah. If he makes that interception,
it changes the game.
Goes away. We'll get into that. It's the Locked On Chargers postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. You can also listen wherever you find your podcasts on the Locked On Chargers podcast feed. Tonight's episode of the Chargers postcast also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. What is a live bet? It's a game that happens live, right in the middle of the game. It's a lot of fun. It's sometimes more fun than a bet you make before the game starts. It's all in one place. You can get a hunch right in the middle of the game and decide to follow that hunch. Check out the latest stats to support your hunch, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Christian Fulton didn't have had a couple of bad plays. They seemingly were back to back, and it cost the Chargers dearly because one of them turned into a PI in the end zone. Although the catch was made regardless of the PI. And that was a nice touchdown play there from who was that made that catch? Rashad Bateman. Yeah, it was a nice pass. It was a nice catch. And Christian Fulton had a PI right before that. And
came right back at him.
Tackled the guy. And yeah, is you think that was the mindset there? Because it makes sense. Like, go back after that guy. Open. He's rattled right now.
To me, it's Bateman was open. Okay, Let's do it again. Let's go right back. I think more than Johnston, a lot of guys held on to mistakes this game for whatever reason. They couldn't get out of their own heads. And Fulton, who's been having a heck of a season all season long, covering guys, making plays, tackling the ball carriers, it just seemed like you said, like he held on to those mistakes, and that's going to cost you each and every game, each and every play. If you can't, again, go back to that short-term memory. If you can't have that in this league, it's not that the games aren't going to go well for you. You're not going to be able to play at this level. You got to be able to let mistakes go. It happens. It's a part of the game. You got to let it go.
Yeah, that's without a doubt. It seemed like the lights might have been shining a little too bright tonight on the Chargers. But hopefully,
I don't understand why though. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
This game, this Baltimore team, it has been struggling throughout the season. This was a very winnable game. It's a game, in my opinion, that I believe they should have won. You eliminate a couple mistakes here and there, and obviously JK not being there. But this was a game for the Chargers to win. The second half, to me, especially from an offensive standpoint, it seemed to me that the old line, it looked like they were trying to solve a Rubik's Cube out there. They were confused, giving up sacks. It just looked different. This didn't look like the Charger team that we've seen over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's true. Especially in the second half, it seemed like where I saw Herbert stepping up in the pocket in the second half, I saw him being a little too complacent or a little too confident that his line, because the line was so, I mean, I guess it makes sense. The line was so good at giving him time in the first half. And in the second half, when they weren't, he wasn't adjusting, and they were all over him, and that was the problem. A lot of the critics are saying that the win last week was really the first big win for the Chargers, right? And they wanted to see him play a real defense, or a real offense rather, see if their defense could hold up, and they did. And that was obviously a shootout to beat the Bengals after another bad second half. So is this an epidemic in your opinion, a bad second half team?
Listen, I think I mentioned this last week. It's like watching an Oregon football game. The third quarters for Oregon kill them. You talk about SC, I'm gonna talk about Oregon. Oregon is a terrible third quarter team, and it seems like the Chargers have to shake this bug of getting these second halves together and playing like they play in the first half.
Yeah, I don't know how the Ravens could have lost to the Raiders and the Browns.
Listen, the Raiders were playing well at the beginning of the season. I mean, even in that, when they played the Chargers, they were playing. I mean, I think Minshew had a hell of a game against the Ravens. I think he had a heck of a game and performed well. And the Raiders looked the part at the beginning of the season. Just the wheels have fallen off the wagon a little bit.
Derrick Henry, another solid game at linebacker, 10 tackles, 4 solo.
Beast.
Yeah. Cam Ford did not play. He was still out. That was an issue. Khalil Mack did play, 4 tackles, nothing major from him. And they said that Bosa had been on a pitch count, and tonight was not. He also had 4 tackles. So I was kind of surprised. I mean, how much of their day kind of being, inconsequential, if you will, is on the Ravens offensive line, not allowing them to get to the quarterback. It feels like, those guys are good. And I feel like they're dealing with injuries, but where would you put the percentage? Would you give credit to the injuries, that those guys aren't 100%, or the Ravens just did a nice job dealing with both of them?
I think the Ravens did a good job of dealing with both, but at the end of the day, when you're on that field, it doesn't matter if you're 100%, 50%. When you step on that field, you got to be at your best. If you're hurt and you can't really give it all you got, you shouldn't be out there, because guys, offensive, defensive, will take advantage of that. But I would put it out. The Ravens did a great job of handling the Chargers defensive line and the pressure that we've been getting, but they protected well. I felt like we were kind of bland on defense, as far as from a pressure standpoint. I feel like we got to come with more. You got to do more with your D-line. Draw up something different, do something unique. Don't be the same thing each and every week.
Derwin James had 6 tackles and the only sack for the team. And the one thing we haven't really talked about, which I think had to be a factor, we did talk about it a little last week going into this game, when it's Harbaugh versus Harbaugh, they both talked about it going into the game. That is, the biggest factor is trying to second and third guess, what they're going to do, because they both know what each other does so very well that they have to account for that. And I feel like a lot of tonight's game plan was based on Jim Harbaugh not letting John Harbaugh get inside of his head. And it felt like, they, got logged. What is it? Paralysis by analysis. They got lost in the playbook trying to be too fancy, right? Which came around to being, as you pointed out, flat, because they were trying to outsmart the other coach.
Yeah. But also, you going back to John, he knows Greg as well,
Good point.
He knows Greg as well. Greg was with him, so he knows the tendencies. He knows what he likes to do, and down in distances, he's familiar with it. When you're familiar with a team or with different coaches, it's the game is completely different. It's hard. It's a lot harder. Because again, they're familiar with you. They know your tendencies, and they know exactly who you are. So, it happens. It happens. But I want to highlight somebody who has been continually showing up each and every week Darius Davis, and it's, special team guys don't get a lot of love, but he continues to shine on these special teams units, whether it's punt return or kick return or return of, I believe it was 46 yards and then a 19-yard punt return. So shout out to Davis.
Well, where are you at this point of the season on the kickoff? I haven't seen anybody return a kick in a long time. Like, they're just kicking it out of the end zone like we predicted they would at the start of the season. I think in the start of the season, they're like, I'm just going to kick it and let them see what happens. Now they're like, I don't want to waste my time with that. I'm just going to kick it out of the end zone. It's ridiculous. I hope they change that rule because I enjoy that part of the game and we don't get to see it ever.
We don't. But here's the thing: as you're getting later into the season, guys are having some success in the beginning of the season returning the ball. So now if I'm a coach, I'm like, no, and especially playing against the Chargers, where I know who their returner is. I know he's electrifying. I know he has the capabilities of taking it the distance. I don't want that guy with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
And so if I'm playing the Chargers, I'm just not going to give you an opportunity, because an opportunity for Davis means I might take it to the house. I might gas you for 40. It can go either way. So I understand it. Do I like it? No. But it's smart, especially when you're playing against a capable returner.
Well, if you as a Charger fan are upset after this loss tonight, I can tell you one guy that is way more upset than you, and that is Jim Harbaugh, because he wants to win this. He has not beaten his brother yet. This is 0-3 now. And you know damn well he sitting on the folding chair outside of his trailer down there in Orange County on the beach is going to have a couple of cold ones around the fire pit tonight, trying to drown his sorrows of losing this game. So as bad as you feel, trust that the coach of the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, feels a whole lot worse, although he could be hanging out with his brother John and commiserating together. I'm sure that they are probably sharing one as a family. So not what we hoped after a very good first quarter where the Chargers were down just 14-13. They lose 30-22. Next week on to Atlanta, 10 o'clock start against the 6-5 Falcons, who are 3-3 at home. Any final thoughts, Kenyon?
Get healthy. That's the thing. Get healthy. Get as healthy as you can.
Yeah.
Because you're still in it. You're right there. Get healthy. Get in that treatment room. That's the biggest thing for this team. Get healthy so we can get out there and play Charger football.
I will say this about the Chargers: as much as they have dealt with injury this season, it has not affected them the way it has in years past. It's always been a go-to. Yeah, it's always been a go-to excuse as to why the Chargers aren't better. And this year it has not been something to lean on as to why they are not better. I feel like they are good in spite of dealing with injuries, and that's a testament to their will, the coaching staff, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not out of it yet. On the road for the Falcons and then on the road for the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs are definitely beatable after what we've seen. You just can't give them the ball with 1:45 on the clock. That's not going to work.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Not that guy.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. For Kenyon Barner, I'm Pete Fox. This is the Locked On Chargers postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out where and when every game is done. You can also listen wherever you find your podcasts on the Locked On Chargers podcast feed. Have a good night. We will talk to you guys next week.